Brilliant. So hi everyone. I'm going to wait a little longer for more people to join, and then we will get started with the session. Brilliant. So welcome back for those of you who were here yesterday, and then welcome for any new joiners. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Evelyn, and we're going to be doing this Maths GCSE algebra course every day until Friday. So yesterday we went through expressions and formulae. So here we've just got a little recap of what we did in yesterday's session. So an expression is a collection of terms. So like say 2x plus 3x, that would be an expression, and 2x would be a term. To simplify expressions, only like terms can be added or subtracted. So if you had terms with an x in it, then you could add them together. But remember, if it's x squared and x, you can't add them to simplify them. They can only be the same letters with the same powers. Yeah. When expanding brackets, make sure that you multiply everything inside the bracket with everything outside of the bracket. And an equation usually has one variable and is only true for certain values. And a formula, it has usually two or more variables and it's always true. Yeah, so remember, an easy way to spot formula and equations is formula usually has like loads of letters, whereas equations usually have like one. And then to rearrange formulae, we need to use inverse operations. So if you're adding on one side to get rid of that letter or number, you should do the opposite, which is subtract. Yeah. Now, someone's already asked a question. I will be focused on one branch of algebra today. No, we're going to be focusing on linear equations and simultaneous equations, but we'll get to that in a second. Now, before we move on, to what we'll be doing today, let's just go through a quick recap question based on yesterday's session. So there's two questions here. So the first one is find an expression for the perimeter of the pentagon on the right and make sure it's simplified. So I'd like you guys to have a go. What do you think the perimeter of this pentagon is as an expression? So it's going to have some letters in there. Brilliant. So yeah, once you guys find out, once you guys figure out what the answer is, just put your answer in the chat and then I'll be able to see all of your answers. Perfect. So I'm seeing some really good answers here. Brilliant. Let's go through it. So remember, perimeter is you add your perimeter, if I show you on here. Perimeter is the length all around the outside of your shape. So all we want to do is add all our lengths around the shape and leave it as an expression. Now, expressions are in terms of letters and numbers. So we've got an x here, then we're going to add another 2x, then we're going to add another x, then a y and a y. So if we write it down, so number one, it'll be x plus 2x plus x plus y plus y. That's how we figure out perimeter. We add all the lengths around the outside of the shape. Now, in the question, it says make sure it is simplified. So this isn't in its simplest form. So we can collect like terms and simplify it. So we've got three terms with an x in it. So we've got an x plus 2x plus another x. So 1 plus 2 plus 1 gives us 4. So we've got 4 x's. And then we've got, if I use a different color, we've got two terms with a y in it. So we've got 1y plus another y. So that's 2. So that would be our expression, 4x plus 2y. If you wrote 2y plus 4x, you would still be correct. Now, the second question, and for those of you who haven't had a go, have a go now. If x is 3 centimeters and y is 5 centimeters, calculate the perimeter. So we've already made our life a little bit easier by writing it as an expression. So now we have to do substitution, just like what we did yesterday. So what do you think our answer should be? Brilliant. Cool. So remember, with substitution, all we're going to do is replace the letter with the number. So if x is 3, I'm going to write 4 times 3. Yeah. And then I'm going to put it in brackets. Now, I always advise you when you're doing substitution, always put your multiplications and divisions in brackets, because we have to remember bid maths. We have to multiply first and then add, because multiplication comes before addition in bid maths. So we've got 4 times 3 plus 2, and then y is 5, so it'll just be 2 times 5. So 4 times 3 is 12, 2 times 5 is 10. If I go down a little bit, then 12 plus 10 is just 22. And remember, it's in centimeters, so we have to remember our units as well. So some of you are saying you're a little bit confused. I'm not going to go over it again, but remember, it is going to be recorded and it will be on the MyTutor YouTube channel. So if there is anything that's a bit confusing, you can always go back and watch it over again, and hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense. Now, that was just a recap of yesterday's session on expressions and equations and formulae. Today, what we're going to be going through is linear equations and simultaneous equations. So we'll be solving simple linear equations with x on both sides, and simultaneous equations. So solving linear equations. To solve equations, we want to get the letter by itself on one side of the equal sign. Yeah, so it's very similar to the rearranging that we were doing yesterday. Now, to get the letter by itself on one side of the equal sign, we have to remove numbers and letters as well. Now, to remove them, we have to do the inverse operation, and we have to make sure it's on both sides. So if we have a look at some of the examples at the bottom, here we've got x plus 7 equals 21. Now, some of you might just be able to look at the equation and say, okay, I know what x is going to be equal to. But if we use the method of solving linear equations, you'll be able to apply it to loads of different questions. So let's have a go at this. So I want to get x by itself. That's the goal. Yeah. Now, the way how to do this is I want to get rid of this 7. Now, since I'm adding 7 on the left-hand side, I have to do the inverse operation, which means I'm going to subtract 7. If I do it on one side, I have to do it on the other, because I have to do it on both sides. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with x, and on the right-hand side, I'm left with 21 minus 7. Now, 21 minus 7 equals 14. So that is our solution, x equals 14. And that's the equation solved, yeah? If we have a go at the one on the right-hand side, we've got 2x equals 18. Now, I want to get rid of this 2, and then I'll have x by itself. So since I'm multiplying by 2, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So I want to divide both sides by 2. So I'm left with x on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, I'm left with 18 divided by 2. Now 18 divided by 2 is just 9. So on the right-hand side, we've got x equals 9. And then always remember, check your answers. So once you've figured out what the answers are, you can just substitute your solutions back in. So what is 14? What's 14 plus 7? Or 14 plus 7 is 21. And then what is 2 times 9? 2 times 9 is 18. So we've gotten both of them correct. So that's another way that you can make sure that you get your answers correct, just by checking and putting it back into the equation. Right. So what I like you guys to do is to have a go at the first question and see what answers you get. Remember, put your answers in the chat, and if you have any questions about anything that we're going through, make sure to put it in the Q&A. Okay, I'm seeing some good answers here. Let's have a go at this one then. So let me get a different colored pen. So we've got 4 minus x equals 5. Now I want to get x by itself. So I want to get rid of this 4 for the second. So since I'm adding 4, 4 is positive on the left-hand side. Only because there's a negative after it doesn't mean that it's a negative 4, okay? So I'm adding 4 on the left-hand side. The opposite of adding is subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 4 on both sides. So I'm left with minus x, because that one is a negative. And then on the right-hand side, I've got 5 minus 4. Now, 5 minus 4 is equal to 1. So minus x equals 1. Now remember, when you're solving, you don't want to work out what minus x is. You want to work out what is x. So if minus x is equal to 1, then x is equal to minus 1. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And remember, just to check, put it back into the equation. So what is 4 minus 1? Well, minus and a minus makes a positive, so it would be 4 plus 1, and 4 plus 1 is 5. So we've gotten our correct solution. So remember, always check your answers at the end as well. Right, the next one we're going to do together, and then the last one I'll let you guys do. So the next one, again, we want to get x by itself. So the best thing to do is get rid of this minus 6 first. So we're going to do the opposite. We're going to add 6 on both sides. 12 plus 6 is on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side is 3x. 12 plus 6 is 18. So we've got 18 equals 3x. So if I write that up here, and then it'll be easier to see. 18 equals 3x. And then the next step that we have to do is get rid of this 3, because we still want x by itself. So the opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. So we've got 18 divided by 3 equals x. Now, 18 divided by 3 is 6. So x equals 6, or 6 equals x. And remember, always check your answer. So if we put this back in, we've got 12 equals, and then what is 3 times 6? 3 times 6 is 18, minus 6, sorry, is 12. So have a go at the last question, and then we will go through it and move on. So someone has asked, what are we doing tomorrow? Tomorrow we will be having a look at quadratic equations. So today is linear and simultaneous equations. Tomorrow will be quadratics. Okay, so someone's asked a really good question. How do I decide what I want to minus or divide? So I'm guessing by that question you mean, like, when do you take away and when do you divide? So if you have something, if we go through this question now, so we've got 2x plus 3 equals minus 5. Now, remember, you have to do the same operation on both sides. So a lot of mistakes that some students make is that they decide, okay, I want to get rid of the 2 first. But if you get rid of the 2, that means you have to divide everything on the left-hand side by 2 and everything on the right-hand side by 2. So you're going to end up dividing this 3 by 2 as well. And then you're going to get a fraction, and it's going to make your life a little bit more difficult when trying to solve this equation. So what I would always suggest is, if you have an x and then you're adding something, always get rid of the number that you're adding or the number that you're subtracting first, and then get rid of the number that you're multiplying or dividing, because multiplying both sides and dividing a number by both sides, it makes it a little bit difficult, and it's better to leave that to the last step. So if we have a go at this one, I want to get rid of this 3 because I'm adding it. Yeah, so the opposite of adding is subtracting. So I'm going to subtract both sides by 3 first. Now on the left hand side, I'll be left with 2x. On the right hand side, it's got minus 5 minus 3. Minus 5 minus 3 is minus 8. So we've got 2x equals minus 8. Now, the next step is to get rid of this 2. So since I'm multiplying by 2, I want to divide by 2 on both sides. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with x, and on the right-hand side, I'm left with minus 8 divided by 2. Now, minus 8 divided by 2 is minus 4. So x equals minus 4. So hopefully that makes sense. If you guys do have any questions, make sure to put it in the Q&A. Right. So let me just check the... Okay, so someone's asked for advice for like the adding and subtracting parts. So I would say always try and get rid of if you're adding a number onto your like term, like if you have x plus 12 or x minus 100 or something, get rid of the number that you're adding or subtracting first, and then do multiplication and division afterwards. Yeah, it will make it a little bit easier. Right. This one is a little bit of a harder linear equation question. So this is when you have an x on both sides. Now, firstly, move all the numbers to one side and all the letters to the other side. And then you'll get an equation which looks like the ones that we've just been solving. And then you just continue to solve just like how we've been doing. Now, a good tip to help you to make this a little bit easier is when you're moving the letters and you're moving the numbers, move the letters first, but find the smallest x and then move it. Now, what I mean by this is if we have a look at the example below, we've got 2x over here and a 3x on the other side. Which one is smaller? Is it 2x or 3x? Well, it would be 2x because 2 is smaller than 3 anyways, exactly. So we're going to take the 2x because it's smaller and we're going to move that onto the other side with the 3x. Now, the reason why I say find the smallest one and move it is because then you won't get a negative x, and it will help you to stop making silly mistakes with negative numbers, because when we're working with negative numbers, it's really easy to make mistakes. So we're going to move the 2x and put it onto the other side. So let's do that. Now on the left hand side, I want to move the entire thing, not just the x. I want to move the whole 2x. So the opposite of adding 2x on the left hand side is subtracting 2x. So I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. Now on the left hand side, I'm left with minus 3. And on the right hand side, I've got 3x plus 2 minus 2x. Now, from our knowledge of what we did yesterday with simplifying and also a little bit at the beginning of the session, we can collect these two like terms. We've got 3x and a minus 2x. 3x minus 2x is just x, because 3 minus 2 is 1. So we've got x plus 2. So we've got minus 3 equals x plus 2. Now this equation looks just like what we did on the previous page. So the next step is to get x by itself. So I want to get rid of this plus 2. So I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. So we've got minus 3 minus 2 on the left and x on the right. Minus 3 minus 2 is minus 5. So x equals minus 5. And that's how we solve when x is on both sides. So find the smallest x and then move it and then solve. Brilliant. Now, have a go. We'll go through the first one together because this one is a little bit more tricky, but the one below I would like you guys to try afterwards. So find the smallest x and move it. Smallest one, you've got the choice between 7x and 2x. The smallest one is 2x. So now you want to put that on the other side. The opposite of adding 2x is subtracting 2x. So we've got 7x minus 2x minus 3 on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you've got 12. If I simplify this 7x minus 2x, it's just 5 because 7 minus 2 is 5. So you've got 5x and then you still have your minus 3 equals 12. And then we're going to solve this last part. So I'm going to remove this minus 3 because I want to try and get x by itself. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Now, I will be left with 5x on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side, I've got 12 plus 3, which is 15. And then the last part is to get rid of that 5 on the left-hand side. So I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides. So on the left-hand side, I've got x, and on the right-hand side, I've got 15 divided by 5, which is equal to 3. So x equals 3. Right, what I would like is for you guys to have a go at the last example question below and see what answers you get. Cool, so you've got a lot of y equals minus 2s. Brilliant. Right, let's have a look. Right, find the smallest y and move it. It will make life a little bit easier. So you have a choice between minus 2y and 5y. The smallest one is minus 2y. So since we're subtracting 2y on the left-hand side, we're going to add 2y to do the opposite. So we're left with minus 4 on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, we've got 5y plus 2y plus 10. 5y plus 2y is 7y because 5 plus 2 is 7. And then we still have our plus 10 and our minus 4 on the left-hand side. And then let's go ahead and finish solving this. So we're going to get rid of this plus 10. So we're going to subtract 10 on both sides. So we've got minus 4 minus 10 equals 7y. And then minus 4 minus 10 is just minus 14 equals 7y. And the last thing to do, if I write it over here, the last thing to do is to get rid of that 7. So I want to divide by 7 on both sides. So I've got minus 14 divided by 7 equals y. Minus 14 divided by 7 is minus 2. So y equals minus 2. So well done for you guys who got that one. Right, so let's have a look at when the x's are negatives. So this is very sort of similar to what we've been doing, only this time we've got 2 negative x's. Now this is really when finding the smallest x really helps. Yeah, so you've got a choice between minus 4x and minus 2x. Now which one's smaller? Is it minus 4 or minus 2? Minus 4 is the smallest, so we're going to move that one over to the right hand side. So the opposite of subtracting by 4x is adding 4x. So we're going to add 4x to both sides. So we've got x equals 10 minus 2x plus 4x. Now we'll still have our 10, but minus 2x plus 4x is plus 2x. And then we can continue to solve. So we can get rid of that 10. Since we're adding 10, we want to subtract 10 on both sides. So we've got 8 minus 10 equals 2x. 8 minus 10 is minus 2. So we've got minus 2 equals 2x. And then we want to get rid of that 2. So we want to divide by 2 on both sides. So we've got minus 2 divided by 2 equals x. Minus 2 divided by 2 is just minus 1. So minus 1 equals x. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. If you do have any questions, make sure that you do put them in the Q&A. Right, so the last thing that we are going to go through in terms of solving with linear equations is solving with brackets. Now, the best thing to do when you're solving equations with brackets in it is just expand the brackets and then solve. So if we have a look at the example below, we're going to expand the brackets first and then we're going to solve the equation. So it'll be 3 times x and 3 times minus 5 to expand the brackets. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times minus 5 is minus 15. And then you have equals 12. And then we can go ahead and finish solving. So I want to get rid of this minus 15. Oops. So I'm going to add 15 to both sides. So I'm left with 3x on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, I've got 12 plus 15. 12 plus 15 is 27. So I've got 3x equals 27. And the last step to do is get rid of that 3. So we're going to divide by 3 on both sides. So we're left with x equals 9. So well done for you guys who got 9. Brilliant. Okay, so there's one question, I think it was related to the last one, saying why is minus 4 smaller than minus 2? Minus 4 is more negative than minus 2. So remember your, if you remember your number line, which one is further towards the left? That's how you check whether one is smaller than the other. Which one is further to the left-hand side? Oops. Right. So what I would like you guys to do now is have a go at solving the first equation. What do you think the first one will solve to? What do you think x will be equal to? So remember, expand the brackets first and then go ahead and solve afterwards. Okay, so for simultaneous equations, we're going to move on to that after we finish these example questions. So hopefully your question should be answered for those ones. Okay, so someone's asked quite a good question in terms of exam technique. So if a question was a worded question and they asked you to solve and your letters were words, like say so their example was like how many pizzas, how many slices of pizza does Jake have, or something like that. The question will read the question and the question should tell you how to answer it. So if the question is something like how many slices does Jake get, you can answer it by just saying 6 slices. Yeah, you don't have to say Jake equals 6 slices as your answer. But if the question is something like who gets 6 slices, then you'd say Jake. So make sure that you read the question and it should tell you how to answer it. Right, let's have a go at this one. So expand the brackets first. We're going to do 5 times 3 and then 5 times minus 2x. So 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times minus 2x is minus 10x. And this equals to 30. The next thing to do is we want to get rid of that 15. So we're adding 15 on the left-hand side. So that means we want to subtract 15 on both sides. So we've got minus 10x equals 30 minus 15. Now 30 minus 15 is just 15. And then the last thing to do is get rid of that 10. So I want to divide, and really I want to divide by minus 10 because then I'll get x by itself. If I divide by 10, I'll be left with minus x. So I'm going to divide by negative 10 on both sides. So I'll be left with x equals 15 divided by minus 10. And x should equal, now you can leave it as a fraction. So you could leave it as 15 minus 15 over 10. You could leave it as a simplified fraction. So if you were to simplify it, remember 5 goes into both the numerator and the denominator. So it'd be minus 3 over 2. Or you can leave it as a decimal if you choose to. So that would be minus 1.5 as well. So any 3 of these answers you would get correct, as long as you have that negative in there. It has to be minus 3 over 2. Yeah. If the question says write it in its simplest form, you have to write it as a fraction in its simplest form. Now, if we have a look at the last question, so we've got 2 sets of brackets. We're going to expand both sets of brackets, and then we're going to solve when x is on both sides. So if we do the darker blue one, so 6 times 2x is 12x. 6 times minus 4 is minus 24. And then the lighter blue ones, 8 times 3x is 24x. And 8 times minus 4 is minus 32. Now we have an equation with x on both sides. So remember, look for the smallest x and then move that one. The smallest one between 12x and 24x is 12. So we're going to subtract 12x on both sides. So we're left with minus 24 on the left. And on the right, we've got 24x minus 12x minus 32. Now, 24x minus 12x is 12x. And then we've got our minus 32. And then we're going to continue to solve it. So I want to get rid of this minus 32. I'm going to add 32 to both sides. So we've got our 12x on the right hand side, and then 32 or minus 24 plus 32 is 8. And then the last thing to do is to divide both sides by 12, because we want to get rid of that 12. We want to get x by itself. So we've got 8 divided by 12 equals x. Now you could leave this one as your final answer because it doesn't tell you to leave your fraction in its simplest form, or you could simplify it if you wanted to. And remember, 4 goes into both the numerator and the denominator. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So x equals 2 over 3 for the last one. Right. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. I'm just going to read through the Q&A to see if there's any questions on this. Right. How do you know when to simplify it or change it into a decimal? The question will make it very clear. If they tell you leave your answer in the simplest form, make sure to simplify the fraction. If they don't, then it's not needed. But I would suggest leaving your fractions in its simplest form, just so you don't forget when you answer a range of different questions anyways. Right. Perfect. Brilliant. If you do get a mixed fraction, you can leave it as a mixed fraction as well. I think you meant a mixed number. So yeah, if you got minus 3 over 2, you could leave it as 1.5, like 1 minus 1 and 1 over 2 as well. If you wanted to, that's absolutely fine as well. So brilliant. Let's move on to simultaneous equations. So the best way to solve simultaneous equations is by elimination. So the first thing that you should do is make sure that either your x or y coefficients are the same. Coefficients are the numbers in front of the letter. So like 2, if you have the expression 2x, or the term 2x, sorry, your coefficient of x is 2, because 2 is in front of the x. Yeah. Now, once you've made either the x coefficients or the y coefficients the same, you're going to either add or subtract the equation to eliminate that number or letter. Then you're going to solve, because you'll be left with an equation which you can solve, equations which we've just been solving now. And then you're going to substitute either your x value or the y value that you get back into one of the equations, and you will get the value of the other letter. Now, the best way to do this is to do it through an example. So let's have a go at this. First things first, we want to make either our x coefficient or our y coefficients the same number. Now, the x's, one of the coefficients is 2, the other one is 4, so these two aren't the same. But if we look at the y's, we've got 4 and we've got -4. Now, they have the same actual number, 4 and 4. Now, we don't need to multiply or anything with our equations. We're going to leave it just like this for the moment. Now, I want to either add or subtract these two equations to make sure I get rid of my y. Since they have the same number, I can either add or subtract them. Now, if I've got a +4y and I've got a -4y, I'd have to add these two equations to each other, because 4y plus -4y gives me 0. So if we add two equations, you have to add the entire of the two equations together. So it's going to be 2x plus 4x. 2 plus 4 is 6. So we've got 6x here. Then you've got 4y plus -4y, or plus and the minus make a minus. So it's 4y minus 4y, and that's just 0. And then the last one is 14 plus 4. Now 14 plus 4 is 18. So we're left with this equation after we've added them. Now, looking at this equation, we can easily solve it, just like what we've been doing before. This is exactly the same sort of equation that we've been solving. I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to divide by 6 on both sides. So I'm left with x equals 18 divided by 6, which is equal to 3. So x equals 3. Now, if you did this in an exam and you just wrote x equals 3, you wouldn't get 4 marks. You get some marks, but not 4 marks. The reason why is because you know what x is equal to, but we don't know what y is equal to. So always remember the final step. You're going to take your x equals 3, you're going to substitute it back into one of the two equations. It doesn't matter which one you substitute it back into, but we're going to substitute in x, and then we're going to try and figure out what is y after we substituted it. So if we take this first equation, we've got 2x plus 4y equals 14. That's just the first equation that they gave us over here. I'm going to replace the x with a 3. So that will just be 2 times 3 plus 4y equals 14. So 2 times 3 is 6. So we've got 6 plus 4y equals 14. And this looks just like the other linear equations that we've been solving. So I'm going to get rid of the 6. So adding 6, the opposite is subtracting 6 on both sides. So I've got 4y equals 14 minus 6. So 4y equals 14 minus 6, which is 8. And then I'm going to get rid of that 4. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So dividing both sides by 4, you get y equals 8 divided by 4, which is equal to 2. So x equals 3 and y equals 2. And in your exam, you will write x equals 3 and y equals 2 as your final answer. Sometimes they even have like a line which says x equals ... and then y equals ... You just put in the numbers. Yeah. So always remember to get both values for x and for y. Now, the way how to check whether your answer is correct, because remember, always check. use the equation that you didn't use. So take this one, because we haven't really used that one. 4x minus 4y equals 4, and substitute in your two values for x and y to see if you get 4. So x is 3, so you've got 4 times 3 minus, and then you've got y, which is 2, so you've got 4 times 2. Now 4 times 3 is 12, and 4 times 2 is 8, and 12 minus 8 equals 4. So we've gotten our solutions correct. Yeah, so always remember, find both your x and your y values and definitely substitute your numbers back into one of the equations just to make sure that it is correct. So I'm just checking the Q&A. So Kahoot will come soon, guys. Don't worry about that. I can't think of any helpful rhymes that can help you to add or subtract, but what I would say is try adding. If you don't get 0, then try subtracting and you should get 0. And so there's no harm with just trying it out and seeing whether it works. And then do the opposite if it doesn't. Right. And someone asked, so you always have two values for x and y. So you'll have a value for x and you'll have a value for y. Yeah. If you if one of these equations is not linear, it will be quadratic. That is only for the higher paper. If you're doing foundation, this is the hardest simultaneous equation questions you will get. If you're doing the higher paper, you can get one of those being a quadratic equation. That's when you will get two values for x and two values for y. Yeah, but we're not going to go through one quadratic and one linear equation in today's session. So let's have a look at this example question. Let's go through this one and then we will go on to the quiz after I go through some tips just to help you. Now here, if we look at the coefficients for x's, one's 3, one's 4, they're not the same. If we look at the y's, again, one is 2, one is 5, they're not the same. So what should we do? Well, what we can do is we can multiply each of the equations by a number to make sure that both of these equations will have two coefficients which are the same. Now, if you decide that you want to make your x's the same, you could multiply the top one by 4 and the bottom one by 3, and you'll get both of the equations having 12. So let's have a go at that. So the top one by 4 and multiplying the bottom one by 3, sorry. Now, this is one thing to remember. When you are multiplying equations with numbers, multiply every single thing in that equation by that number. Don't just multiply the x's or just the y's. Make sure you do everything. So if we have a look at the first one, we've got 3x plus 2y minus equals 4, and we're going to multiply it all by 4. So 3x times 4 is 12x. Then we've got 2y times by 4, which is 8y. And then we've got 4 times 4, which is 16. Now the bottom one, we're going to multiply everything by 3. So 4x times 3 is 12x. Then we've got 5y times 3, which is 15y. And then we've got 17 times 3, which is equal to 51. Now, we've got two simultaneous equations. They're pretty much the same equations as the ones that we had before, only everything is either 4 times bigger or 3 times bigger. But the most important thing is that our x coefficients are the same. We've got 12 and 12. Now, if I add the two equations, 12x plus 12x gives me 24x. That doesn't give me 0. I want to get rid of the x's. So I'm not going to add it. Instead, I'm going to subtract it. So 12x minus 12x is 0. 8y minus 15y, well, 8 minus 15 is minus 7. So we've got minus 7y. And then we've got 16 minus 51, and that should give me minus 35. Right, let me just check that that's right. Yeah, So we've got minus 7y equals minus 35. Now, the last thing to do is I want to solve this equation. Now I can divide. I want to get rid of this minus 7, so I have y by itself. So I'm going to divide by negative 7 on both sides. So I've got y equals minus 35 divided by minus 7. Negative divided by negative gives you a positive, just like how a negative times a negative gives you a positive. So we've got y equals 5. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. And then the next thing to do, always remember you're substituting in your value for x. So we're going to put in our value into the equation and work out what x is going to be. So let's take the first equation. We've got 3x plus 2y equals 4. Now, if y is 5, remember, put it into brackets. So we've got 2 times 5 equals 4. Oops. So we've got 3x plus 2 times 5 is 10 equals 4. And then we are going to continue and solve. So I want to get rid of that 10. I'm going to subtract 10 by both sides. So we get 3x. 10 minus 10 is 0. And then 4 minus 10 is minus 6. And then the last thing we want to do is get rid of that 3. So we're going to divide by 3 on both sides. So we get x equals minus 6 divided by 3, which is minus 2. So you've got x equals minus 2 and y equals 5. And always remember to check. So if you put it back into this equation, x equals minus 2, y equals 5, you should get minus 20 plus 20, minus 8 plus 25, which gives you 17. So, okay, so one person asked what would happen if you placed like this equation on top of this one and then you subtracted it. Well, what you realize is that you get the same numbers, but then they wouldn't be negatives, and then you still get exactly the same answer. So you get 7y equals 35, and 35 divided by 7 is 5, so y is still 5. Yeah, so it doesn't matter which one you put on the top and which one you put on the bottom, you still get exactly the same answer. Right, brilliant. I'm glad you understand it now. Hopefully it makes sense to everyone. If it doesn't, make sure that you do rewatch the session on YouTube, and hopefully it should make a little bit more sense when you watch it at your own pace. Now, before we move on to the Kahoot session, a few tips. When there is an x on both sides, it's easier to move the smallest one. So remember, look for the smallest x and move it. Always do the same operation on both sides of the equation. So if you're subtracting 7 on one side, make sure you subtract it on the other side. And when solving simultaneous equations, remember to get both the values for x and for y. So don't just get x, because you will lose like 2, maybe even 3 marks if you don't work out what y is going to be equal to. Yeah. Right. Here is the Kahoot pin. If you do have any questions, make sure to put it in the Q&A during the Kahoot session, because I will be looking for it as we're going through. For those of you who were asking, just a reminder, tomorrow's session is on quadratic equations. So we'll be looking at quadratic equations and interpreting quadratic graphs as well. So make sure to come to that session if you like some help on that. Someone asked, can you put y into the equation you multiply to get 12 to find x. Yes, you can. But I would suggest you putting the values of x and y into the original equation. The reason why is because if you've multiplied it incorrectly, then you'll get your answer incorrect. So just put it back into the original equation, and then you know that you'll most likely get it correct, because it won't be based on a question which you might have gotten incorrect. Right, I'm going to start the session now. You can still enter the session. The pin will be at the bottom of the screen. So let's have a go at these. Right. Solve 6y equals 72. Brilliant. So if we have a look, I want to get rid of the 6, and I want to get y by itself. So divide both sides by 6. 72 divided by 6 is 12. Brilliant. Well done. Okay, so next one, solve 2t minus 5 equals 9. So how do we solve that? Right, brilliant. So remember, I want to get rid of that 5 first. So add 5 on both sides, which will give you 2t equals 14, and then divide 2 by both sides. So 14 divided by 2 is 7. So well done, the top 5. Let's continue. So solve the following. Brilliant. So if we have a look at this one, so I want to get rid of the 4 on the bottom. That means I'm dividing the left-hand side by 4. So I want to do the opposite, multiply both sides by 4. So 3 times 4 is 12. So brilliant. Perfect. Well done, guys. So let's go on to the next one. The solution to 2x plus 1 equals 19 is 10. Is that true or is that false? So have a go at solving it, and do you get 10? Yeah, guys, I realize the meme ones are bots. Right, brilliant. So if we have a look at it, so if we get rid of that 1, we subtract both sides by 1. So we get 2x equals 18, and then divide 2 by both sides. So 18 divided by 2 is 9. And another way how you could check it is put in 10 into the equation. So 2 times 10 is 20, plus 1 is 21, which isn't 19. So it's false. Brilliant. Sorry, I went a bit too quick there, but well done. Well done for the top 5. Right, have a go at this question. Right, brilliant. So remember, expand the brackets first. So you'll get 20y plus 8, and then you subtract 8 from both sides. So you get 20y equals 40, because 48 minus 8 is 40, and then divide 20 by both sides. So 40 divided by 20 is 2. So brilliant. Well done for the top 5. Perfect. Right, next one. Right, solve 4y plus 3 equals 2y plus 8. What do we get? Okay, so non-calculator paper. So someone's asked what type of algebra questions come up in calculator and non-calculator papers. Non-calculator papers are probably going to be questions like what we just went through. Calculator papers might be more worded questions or applied questions to algebra. So maybe they might give you a shape and then say, oh, the area of this shape is like, they give you the lengths of the sides and then they ask you to work out the area of the shape in terms of expressions, like what we did for the first question we went through today, the recap question. Right, y equals 2.5. Brilliant. So remember, look for the smallest y, which is 2y, move that. So you've got 2y plus 3 equals 8. Then you subtract the 3 from both sides. So you get 2y equals 5, and then divide by 2. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Brilliant. Well done, top 5. Right, have a go at this next one. It's worth double the points. So solve the following equation. So have a look at this equation and try and solve it. So yeah, answering that question, calculator and non-calculator paper. These sort of questions could come up in both. So you could see them in both of the questions, but what I would say is really make sure that you know how to answer these questions without a calculator. That way, if it comes up in both, you know how to do it. But usually in the calculator paper, when it comes to algebra, it will be more like applied questions or problem solving questions. Will shape equations using algebra be covered? Well, tomorrow I'm going to do a recap question for today's session, and we will be going over a shape question, which is covered by algebra. So have a look out for that tomorrow. Right, perfect. Let's have a look at this one. So remember, expand the brackets first. So you get 7x plus 14 on the right-hand side, and then move the 7x. So you get 2x minus 4 equals 14. Then move the minus 4. So you get 2x equals 18. And then you divide 2 by both sides. 18 divided by 2 is 9. Perfect. Right, well done for the top 5. True or false? When solving simultaneous equations, you should first make the coefficients of x or y the same. Is that true or is that false? What do you guys think? Brilliant. So they should be the same. Remember, you have to make sure that the number in front of the x's or the number in front of the y's should be the same first, and then you add or subtract the equations, and then you solve, and then you substitute back in. So always make sure that they are the same first. Right, well done for the top 5. Have a go at this next question. It's worth double the points, and I think we might skip the last question just for time. So this one is, you have 2 minutes to solve this simultaneous equation. Have a go at it. Make sure to get both x and y values. Right, someone's asked which exam board is this? Everything that we've gone through today comes up in all exam boards. So even though the session is tailored for Edexcel, I've used a lot of like Edexcel past paper questions in my sessions. But simultaneous equations, solving linear equations, you need to know how to do that for GCSE Maths in general, not just for Edexcel. So AQA, WJEC, OCR, all of them, you need to know how to solve these. Cool. Do different examples have different methods and working out? It depends on I wouldn't say they have different methods or different working out. I would say that they cover different topics, because usually in maths, remember guys, your method, obviously your method does get marked, but there's no one method of finding a solution to something. Yeah, some people prefer to use the function machines method when solving linear equations, which we haven't gone through today. You will get marks for that if you do decide to use the function machine method. So it's not necessarily on the method, but the type of questions that they ask and how they ask it. That's the difference between the exam boards. Right, let's have a look at this one. So if we have a look, the x's, the coefficients aren't the same, but the y ones are the same. Now we have minus 2y and a plus 2y. I want to add both of these equations together because minus 2y plus 2y gives you 0. And then you have 4x equals 24. Divide 4 by both sides, you get x equals 6. And I think that's the only solution here where x equals 6. I think some people got x and y the opposite way around, and that's why you thought it was the red one. It should be the orange one. Right, so just for time, I'm going to skip the last question. It's just another simultaneous equation question. I'll let you guys have a look at it, but what I will say is I am going to skip it for now and just look at, here's the answer for it though. And we'll look at the podium just because we have run out of time and I don't want to go over by too long today like we did yesterday. But well done third place to Jess. Well done Lewis for coming second place. And well done Crispy Bacon for coming in first, and runners up Danielle and Habby. So well done everyone for participating today. Hopefully simultaneous equations and linear equations made a lot of sense. But what I will say is we will go through a recap tomorrow, and I'll make sure that we finish the Kahoot quiz properly tomorrow as well. I'll make sure we have enough time. We will go through like a worded shape sort of question tomorrow, because I know some of you are asking for more worded questions as well. And yeah, we'll have a look at some more algebra topics throughout the week, and at the end we'll go through exam technique and revision techniques as well. But for now, have a good rest of the day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye guys.